All right, let's talk about Alien Isolation by Keith R.A. DeCandido. I don't know how to pronounce this dude's last name, but finally, I'm just going to get into it. Finally, we get an alien novel from the Titan Books era that doesn't completely suck, that delivers on what people want, which is some alien action without politics or just bad writing. Unfortunately, it still has some issues that this modern alien series does, with the whole, we gotta have Amanda Ripley in it. That's not the author's fault. This is a video game novelization. It's the only aliens... Well, I can't even say that now. Up until, 2 years ago, it was the only one that did this. This came out 4 years after Alien Isolation came out. So it adds in, the DLC stuff with it. And my problem with video game novelizations is this. It takes a lot to make them interesting. My prime example of this is Dark Forces Soldier of the Empire by William C. Ditz. It's a fine book until you get to the video game, and the climax of the book is the first level of Dark Forces, and it really consists of Kyle Katarn shooting everyone. That's it. It's just I don't know. It's boring version of Commando. And that's how I feel with a lot of video game novelizations. You don't see me reviewing any of the Tom Clancy Ghost Recon or Splinter Cell books. I don't care. I've tried reading those back in the day, and they don't appeal to me. There are a few exceptions to this. The Resident Evil series, for instance, which I'll get to eventually, does its own thing. And this book does its own thing too, because it's only one half a novelization. The other half is a family drama, which is arguably more interesting than any of the Xenomorph stuff. Finally, we get a compelling story with not that many characters. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Alien Isolation is about Amanda Ripley being called by Weyland Yutani to investigate Sevastopol Station because they have a piece of equipment that's from the Nostromo. Amanda has spent her whole life trying to figure out what happened to her mother. And of course, they get to a Sevastopol Station, it's a complete mess, and we've got a xenomorph on there that happens to be everywhere. But that is explained. We also have androids going amok. So, yeah, that's one half of it. The other half is Amanda growing up without her mother. She never knew her biological father, but was raised by a guy named Paul that was her stepfather, and he's a drunk and a loser. And so she basically has to take care of herself and her stepfather after her mother goes missing. It kind of brings in something that I didn't like from Out of the Shadows, but I do appreciate keeping continuity. Because this is one thing this book does, compared to, with the exception of the Rage War trilogy, which has a couple short stories that I've reviewed, one in Aliens Bug Hunt, but there's another one in Predator If It Bleeds, where we have continuation with characters from that storyline. But it brings in an element, Alien Isolation does, where it's implied that Ellen Ripley and Dallas have a sexual relationship, which Tim Levin just decided was a thing in Out of the Shadows. It's something I've never liked. You don't get that in the movie. You don't get that in the novelization that Alan Dean Foster wrote. And you don't get it in either cut of Alien. I actually watched both cuts after Out of the Shadows. I didn't say this in the review, but I literally sat and watched both cuts to see if there was any sort of relationship between Dallas and Ripley and that. And there is nothing there. I don't know why they decided that that was a thing, other than the Alien books are sexual. Like, Alien itself, in concept, I've said this before, it's a very sexual thing. It was created by H.R. Giger, and the alien's head looked like a wiener. The concept art, it's very phallic. Everything's phallic, everything's a womb. Like, it's always been sexual in nature, but sometimes, a lot of times in these Alien books, the authors really don't know how to tie that in. And I liked in this that it's from a child's perspective, and it doesn't blatantly say, hey, Dallas and Ripley are boning. Ellen Ripley. Not Amanda Ripley. She's a little kid in those flashbacks. But yeah, Paul's a turd. She ends up basically like getting her like whole life ruined because she doesn't want charity from Weyland-Yutani because they're just paying all the families off because it's basically their fault that the Nostromo went missing. And it's just basically she has like a rough life till she meets Zula, which is the other tie-in here. From what I can't remember if Zula Hendricks is in the Isolation video game or if she's just brought into this book. For those of you who don't know, Zula Hendricks is the main character of Aliens Defiance, which was a 12-issue comic book series, I think it was only 12 issues, by Brian Wood, yes, that's right, of Star Wars 2013 Brian Wood fame. You know, the guy that just basically rebooted Star Wars and then ripped off a bunch of stories from other books and made them terrible. That guy. And honestly, it's in a review of Aliens Defiance. I actually reviewed most of those issues, either as like videos of their own, or they were in my old series Comic Book Throwdown, where I would review all the comics that came out on Wednesday of that week. I used to do that, and I'm pretty sure I've covered just about every issue of Aliens Defiance, because it was horrible. It was a horrible series. They followed it up with a sequel series that Ellen Ripley was... Not Ellen. I get them mixed up, because they're both called Ripley in these books, and it's frustrating. Amanda Ripley and Zula team up in a sequel called Aliens Resistance. It got canceled, I think, after 4 or 6 issues. It was an absolute... That was worse. That was arguably worse than Defiance was. But Zula's a meh character. Her whole thing is she got injured in combat and like is having all the spinal work done because she's basically paralyzed and is dishonored on the battlefield. And so she's on a redemption arc. That's brought up a little bit in Alien Isolation, but for the most part, that's just my background knowledge of the character. So now you know more about her. She's meh. She's a meh character. I think it's implied that there might be some sexual tension between Amanda and Zula, but it doesn't really go anywhere with that. Plus, apparently, Amanda has a child at some point that is of the Ripley bloodline, because we find that out in Alien Sea of Sorrow, that they have a psychic connection with the xenomorphs. Remember that? Remember that stupid crap? I don't see a bridge to that in this, but I mean, like, is anyone ever going to touch that again? I know that Titan Books has like done a 3-in-1 of the Shadows trilogy, which is Out of the Shadows, Sea of Sorrow, and River of Pain. And here's the thing, that's the most not trilogy thing I've ever heard. River of Pain has next to nothing to do with Sea of Sorrow or Out of the Shadows. At least the first 2 books take place on the same planet. It's dumb, It's ham-fisted and garbage, but they both take place on the same planet, several hundred years apart from one another. Was it several? I don't know. It's a long time between the two. It's garbage. It's a garbage set of books. Tim Lebbon's worst book. And I'm saying that after reading Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void. It's his worst book. But we're talking about Alien Isolation here. I keep getting sidetracked. There's not a lot to talk about. It's fine. It's a fine book. Finally. I know. We get like a straight up alien adventure that isn't awful. Or really weird. Because the Rage War trilogy, I would never call that awful. I think it's pretty good. But it's weird. It's a weird trilogy. And like everything else besides that has kind of been at best mediocre. At worst unreadable. So it's nice that when we get to Alien Isolation, we finally have an alien book worth reading. And no, I still won't review Alien Echo. I don't want to read a YA alien book. No one wants that. Anyway, what would I give this? I give this a solid 4.2 out of 5. It's pretty good. The family drama stuff is the highlight of the book. It has continuity, which is such a rarity for the Alien story, that it's worth your time just for that. Even if it's not the greatest continuity, like, nods. As a Star Wars fan, like a Legends/Expanded Universe fan, I love to see that. And I think y'all will get something out of this. So anyway, have a nice day.